Great. So thank you everyone for joining. If this is your first time or if you've been with us before, always glad to see you. We got an exciting session for you for Lawyer Up, but first of all, what is Lawyer Up? So it's basically a series of workshops to take place monthly, second Wednesdays. And that way we can have some consistency in teaching people about how to navigate different aspects of the system. If you live in Baltimore or Maryland or elsewhere, you know that there's a lot of systems of oppression, affecting Black people specifically, but also other marginalized groups. And it's really important to know that the system is wrong, but also that as an individual, you can prepare yourself more, figure out how to overcome barriers in your own life. And so far we've done in Lawyer Up, ethics and attorneyship. What do you know is your attorney's obligations to you as a client? And then also around parole and probation, how can you navigate those systems in the best way and the ways that makes most sense? Those are on YouTube, so encourage people definitely to watch those. But today we'll be talking about expungements in Maryland and overcoming certain barriers such as the unit rule to expungements. And so, yeah, I'll hand it off to you, Nicole. But yes. Yeah, everyone once again.
Yes, definitely. You're so right, Matt. When we thought about this collaboration in this series of us really not only teaching, but even learning as well, right? Because you never stop learning. I know I never stop learning. And it's this real holistic way of us bringing on not only the experts in the field, right, but also people impacted by these very systems, right? To have a discussion, right? To learn, to discuss, and be able to ask real questions that real people deal with about these issues. And so if you find that there is a topic or a system or a thing you need to learn how to navigate, and you want Baltimore Alfred Justice to bring the experts in the room and bring the folks who've been impacted by that in the room, please drop those in the chat. We would love to figure out what more you want to learn about, or drop it in the YouTube comments, or drop it in the Facebook comments. What more do you want to learn around navigating these different systems that we find ourselves navigating as Black and Brown people? Today, I am so excited to have some really special guests with us, right? And these are people you will find that we work with, right? That we're doing the work with. And so it's not just us going to find these, picking these people off of a cherry tree, but these are actual people who are engaged in this work and who are doing this work to help folks navigate these systems. And today we're talking about expungement. One of our first panelists we're having is Mr. Christopher Duis. Mr. Christopher Duis is the policy director, I hope I'm saying the right term, for the Job Opportunities Task Force, an organization that advocates for policy reforms for low-wage workers, right? This is an organization that is really entrenched in economic development and ensuring that low-wage workers advance to high-wage jobs, right? In addition, we will have attorney Landon White, right? He's our champ. He's the champ for Alfred Justice. I don't know who the other people's champs are, right? But this is a homegrown attorney, from Baltimore, right? Baltimore, Maryland, who is also the owner of the Baltimore Jazz Festival, and which is coming up. So make sure you all go get your tickets, go become sponsors, and support this local way of really engaging with our folks and listening to great jazz music. And so we'll have Mr. Landon White. And then we have another gentleman coming up Chris, can you tell us this
Yes.
gentleman's name?
Absolutely, yes. This is Mr. Harold Coleman. He is a Baltimore City resident. Well, I believe he has now just moved to Baltimore County. He works actually at the Bay Bridge down by Annapolis. And
employee.
yes, yes. Been working there for about 20 years. He's doing great work. And the reason why we wanted him to speak is because he also testified on one of our expungement bills to reduce the waiting period for criminal record expungements. And so he's going to be on to talk about what his experience was like lobbying Lou Clippinger and staying in the face of Senator Smith, and what the process was like for him and the barriers that he sees to moving forward and how we can overcome them. So he should be on shortly, but that's Mr. Harold Coleman.
Yep. And if this is we're open for discussion. So if you have any questions or comments, don't hesitate to drop it in the chat. If that takes too long, raise your hand. Even if it's in the middle of what someone said, once they finish that sentence, you raise your hand, you have that question, let's get it asked. It's all about open dialogue. So Matt, did you want to kick us off with a question from one of our panelists? And do we have Mr. Landon? He's a working attorney, so he's
yeah, there is. Yeah, so thanks again to our amazing panelists. We really appreciate you being here. So I'll be sharing my screen for now, and Mr. Duis here, Chris, would like to fill us all in on info about expungements. So yeah, thank you again, Chris, for sharing all of your knowledge today.
Fantastic. Right, looking forward to this.
Yeah, so.
Do I just go ahead and get started, or should I wait for the PowerPoint?
Oh, can you see the PowerPoint?
I can see the PowerPoint.
It's the first kind of just the introduction.
Oh,
not the JOTF PowerPoint.
Well, really quick, here is some helpful advice if you've never used Zoom before. At the bottom left, you can see the mute and unmute buttons. So try to be mindful of when you are on and off mute if you want to come off and ask a question, or give someone else space. The mute button's there for you. You're also welcome to join us on camera. Always glad to see your lovely faces, but no pressure. If you want to ask any questions, feel free to do so in the chat if that's more comfortable. And that way we can make sure we definitely get back to you. And then if you need to leave for whatever reason, in the bottom right, there is the leave the session. So that's just a little bit on how to use Zoom. But Mr. Duis, I'll pass it off to you.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. So let's start with key terms, right? So first of all, what is an expungement? So an expungement in the state of Maryland, for those who I feel like most people on this call are already aware, but an expungement is basically encoded in state law. I believe it's Criminal Procedure 10-101, where it defines what expungement is. And that simply is the obliteration of an individual's record so that there is no evidence of an incident anywhere within state records, court records, or police records, right? So this is the total erasure of a specific incident. As an example, suppose somebody had a theft charge or whatever like that, whether they were convicted or not convicted, if that record is expunged, it no longer exists on the Maryland record. Now, the reason why that matters is because another aspect that happens often in Maryland law is shielding. Shielding simply says that it's hidden from public view. That distinction is going to matter as we talk more about the concept of criminal record expungement. But just that, when it comes to advocates, what we always push for is expungement and not shielding. Shielding simply means that it's, like I said, shielded from public view, but whether you are an employer or have the right amount of income and resources, you can kind of slide into certain systems where you can still find out somebody's shielded or hidden record. Specifically, and I should probably mention this, when a record actually does exist, it goes to the Criminal Justice Information System, also known as CJIS, CJIS. And what that simply means is it's literally just a repository where all of these records are held. Now, if you are really savvy, you can actually pay certain people's money, or get in contact with certain firms that can get that information to you. So when we talk about expungements, we're talking about the total obliteration of a record as if it never happened, as if it does not exist. You'll also, never mind, I'll leave that there. So why expunge? Let me just start with some quick statistics. The first thing you should know is that 25% of Marylanders, this is estimated by the National Employment Law Project, 25% of Marylanders, working Marylanders, I should say, about 1.5 million adults have some type of charge or conviction, or even just an arrest record that would appear on a routine background check. That's the most important thing for us as advocates. Now, I work for the Job Opportunities Task Force, so my mission is to ensure that people, specifically African Americans from lower income communities, if I'm going to be totally transparent, have full access to gainful employment that can take care of their children, family, and themselves. However, what we've discovered is there are over 1,100 collateral consequences to having a criminal record in the state of Maryland. What that means is that, let me just name the big four. If you have a record, whether you were found guilty or not, and that's important. Some people will get charged, they will not be convicted, they'll beat the charge. Or maybe it was just an arrest record, but the charges were dropped, or the state decided not to prosecute. This is called a null prosecute. What happens there is that it's still on your record, so people can still find it. So the reason why expungement is so important is that that obliteration of the record means that it will not be a barrier to housing. It will not be a barrier to education. It will not be a barrier to public assistance, to obtaining an occupational license. This is your barber's license, your license to do asbestos removal, your license to be a bail bondsman.
Nursing,
exactly.
In Baltimore.
Mm-hmm. All of these things are at jeopardy just because you have a record. And I want to be very clear, whether you were found guilty or not. And for us, the most important, I should also mention bank loans. You can't get a loan and start a business or advance your business if you have a criminal record, specifically based on what that record might be. Small Business Administration will sometimes give you a $50,000 microloan. If you have a criminal record of any sort as of right now, well, until we passed the bill about this, they can just deny you because you have a record. So in a nutshell, having a record turns you into a second-class citizen. You have not read the book, The New Jim Crow. This is the premise of the entire book. Highly suggest you read it. So we've been pushing as advocates the erasure of a criminal record, which is basically what expungement is. That is the reason why you have to, why an expungement is necessary. Another thing that Matt has mentioned here, an expungement is not automatic. This is something that we've been pushing for years, the automatic expungement of convictions when it's eligible for expungement. What that simply means is, let's say you have a charge. Let's just say you were not found guilty. Before 2021, October of 2021, that would just stay on your record. Now remember, you were not found guilty. Let's say it was dismissed. Let's say they didn't prosecute you. It just stays there. So you go for another job, when an employer wants to perform a background check, that will pop up, even if it says acquitted, even if it says dismissed. So many individuals, in fact, the vast majority of criminal records that exist right now in the state of Maryland that will pull up from a background check are not actual convictions. They are non-convictions. They are probations before judgments, stet dockets, things that actually did not lead to you being found guilty, but it just stays on the record. And that becomes a massive barrier to employment. So the one thing that we definitely pushed was the automatic expungement of non-convictions. Took 10 years to actually pass in 2021. So now, after a 3-year waiting period, that record is automatically expunged. However, that's for non-convictions. If you were actually found guilty, then you still have to petition. And if you were found guilty, then that means you have to pay a $30 charge to file that petition for expungement. So if you are an individual who has a record and you say to yourself, oh, I got arrested, it's not a big deal, or I beat the charge, it's not a big deal, make sure you file to get that record expunged. The Baltimore Action legal team can help you out with that, as well as Out for Justice, but you have to get that expunged, or else it will be a massive barrier to employment for you. Something else I should just mention, this is my last piece of data and statistics, 94% of employers perform at least one type of background check. That is the vast majority of employers, which means only 6% do not. It's a very low number. So if you got a record, like I said, it does lead to second-class citizenship. Let me see, anything else on this that I should mention? What can be expunged? Yeah, this is very true. Criminal charges can be expunged depending on what the type of charge is. If it is, let me just run through the list rather quickly. If it is a non-conviction, as in you were not found guilty, that is eligible for expungement. If it is a minor nuisance crime, this is trespassing, public indecency, loitering, public urine, whatever, those are also eligible for expungement. Oh man, there's a whole list of things that are eligible here. But I will also say that misdemeanors, if it counts as a misdemeanor, I should say most misdemeanors are eligible for expungement, but in criminal procedure 10-110, there is a list of what is eligible for expungement, and there are a lot of other ones that are not. Second-degree assault, common law battery, and anything domestic or violence related is also eligible for expungement, but you'd have to wait 15 years. And the last thing I'll say is there are certain felonies. Now, most felonies are not eligible for expungement, but certain ones are, specifically all types of burglary, first degree, second degree, third degree, and fourth degree, as well as theft and CDS possession. So if you have any of those charges, those are eligible for expungement. I believe the attempt, the distribution as well. Yeah, all those are eligible for expungement as well. And that was a big move that happened in 2018 and was parts of the Justice Reinvestment Act. So those are eligible for expungement. Any traffic entries that have the possibility of incarceration are also eligible for expungement. However, I will say that DUIs, driving under the influence, as of right now in the state of Maryland, the vast majority of cases that led to a DUI are not eligible. You have to fight like hell to get that taken care of. That's like a traffic law thing. We've been pushing for that, but of course, when you try to add certain things to the expungement process, you're going to have the lion's share of people who just may not see eye to eye with you on that issue, who will be in resistance. Let me see, the statutes does not include protective and peace orders. I'm gonna let that one sit, but that's the vast majority of what can be expunged. The last thing I
that peace order thing, Chris, that really grinds my gears. So.
Yes. You can go ahead and explain it, Nicole, if you want. Just go.
I'll let you finish up so we can get
Gotcha.
Hey, Christopher, I was sorry. It took me a minute. Yeah.
Okay. Hey, we got you. Okay, Mr. Harold.
Yes, sir.
Ma'am. I sound like a man then.
Now, let me just take a second to introduce Mr. Coleman. Mr. Coleman actually already gave you a very brief introduction. I'll give you a second now to introduce yourself, but I'll just say Mr. Coleman testified on one of our expungement bills, the Redeem Act of 2022. Is a very staunch advocate. All you have to do is just a quick introduction, Mr. Coleman, and then later in this presentation, I will pass the ball over to you. But go and introduce yourself, Harold.
Yeah, my name is Harold Coleman, and I was advocating for the waiting period, reduction of waiting period for the misdemeanors and felonies. And I testified on both the House and Senate bills. So, we could get the time reduced, instead of waiting 10 to 15 years, that's like having a sentence on the street,
Yeah.
So I'll talk a little bit more about that, but I'm gonna let him go ahead and finish, and then
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, Mr. Coleman?
Well, I am a convicted felon. I served time in prison, and I got out and got myself together. I found a pretty decent job with the government. I've been there 16 years, and I got some stuff expunged, but I'm at the end, so I fall under that 15-year waiting period. And it's just so long. I could have been moved on, you know what I mean? But the way they got things is just, they want us to wait all this time so that they can put that opportunity for us to fail again. They want you to fail, So, but I done helped a couple people get employment where I am, because the agency I work for, they do hire convicted felons, as long as it ain't nothing like, something where you murdered somebody. Matter of fact,
well, even if you murdered somebody, you still deserve a chance to get a job if you home.
True.
Yes. Well, let me correct that. They do hire murders, because it's a supervisor that worked for State Highway. He was. Yeah. So let me correct.
They're not murderers anymore, right?
Right.
They're out.
Yes, I mean,
They've gotten themselves together, so, okay.
yes.
Mr. Coleman,
Yeah.
and go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was, I've had my problems, but that was when I was younger, and I'm
Right.
trying to go forward so I can be an example for all of these people that's coming from behind me. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? Because they have no way out. You know what I'm saying? And that's why the city's problems is bigger than that. They want us to wait 10, 15, 20 years so that people can fail again and they can get their convictions and keep us locked down,
Yeah. No, I appreciate your story, Mr. Harold, and we will definitely
Yes.
come back to you.
Yeah,
You are joined on a panel with Mr. Christopher Duis and attorney Landon White. And I wanted to
Yes.
pivot to Mr. Landon to get some of his insight as an attorney, right? Who often does expungement, attends expungement clinics, offers expungements to his clients, and even moreover, really fights for his clients to help to ensure that they may not have to go through expungement, fighting for their freedom. So I wanted to bring you in, Landon, and just get your perspective on, you've been in the game for a while, right? And you've been here long enough to see when there wasn't as much access to expungement versus we've gotten a little bit a little further and with expungements. And so, I just want to get your insight on like where we were to now, and how much more further do we need to go? Like what are some of the things that you're seeing around expungement, and what are the things that what are some of the tools that I think I'm asking like 5 different questions?
Yeah.
But okay, go ahead.
All right. So, at the end of the day, over the last year, we're seeing maybe 2. We're seeing people being able to, one case gets dismissed or no, or they're acquitted. They're able to go directly to the counters or go directly to the clerk's office and get those expunged. This allows for, and not only is it the attorneys that are telling them to get it expunged, a lot of the judges are saying, hey, your attorney will walk you to the clerk's office and assist you in getting it expunged. This allows for, once again, employment. And, we don't really deal with the housing as much, except for during COVID. We, a lot of solo private attorneys, we did get a lot of calls because not only individuals being put out of their homes or afraid because they couldn't pay their bills, but more importantly, worried that they would not be able to get housing. Some of them because of their background. A few things that I do think need to change. I think a long years is a long time to wait for some of these crimes. I believe that if someone shows the ability to go through a 2-3 probation, another 5 or so years of staying out of trouble, they should be able to have all their rights fully restored. When you talk about certain crimes, there are certain issues with certain dangerous weapon crime that aren't able to be expunged, even the misdemeanors. And a lot of the older crimes, a lot of the what do you call it? You don't know if they're a gun or a knife, right? But if they're labeled a dangerous weapon, that's something that still can be addressed. And I know I have a client right now that you're trying to address, but it's difficult. In regards to tools that we have, I think the I know at least in the city and the surrounding counties, and being trained on helping individuals go and get their records expunged. I think a lot of times where attorneys, where our job is to kind of take the pressure off. And some individuals may have issues with comprehending the forms, the case forms. Some individuals just may be afraid to walk into a courthouse, and a lot of them get anxiety from doing that. So you have people that already have issues with the justice system trying to go get it expunged, and now they're dealing with certain types of anxiety. I know we are doing, the Brothers of Iota Phi Theta are doing with the we're doing a expungement clinic and at Our Daily Bread. I've mentioned to them, of course, having it Our Daily Bread is a wonderful place to have it at. However, I do think it's the need to also have it at some neutral places, not just in, displaced communities, or not just where there are, in homeless shelters, but there are a lot of middle class, I would say, young men and women between the ages of, 21 or 18 to 35 that may not want to go to a Daily Bread, or may not want to go to Out for Justice, and they may decide, what, I wouldn't mind going to a restaurant or an office building. So sometimes they are spending their funds or their money where, quite frankly, the system is now set up where at least 50% of them don't have to do that, right? So these are certain things that I would say, as the different organizations are starting to look into having money, or are going out for funding. Yes, having it in certain displaced communities is important, but one of the issues I have with just the justice system in Baltimore in general, basically, if you don't live in certain parts of the Charles Village community or Roland Park, your community is considered a criminal or drug infested area, which is outrageous. But we allow that narrative, but there are a lot of communities that are middle class, that are Black, that have a strong base, and we have to go into these communities as well and help those young people get their records expunged, because I can almost tell you a lot of them will never go to a Daily Bread or any other place to sit in, whether it's embarrassment, whatever it may be, to get their records expunged. Hopefully I gave some insight on what I'm seeing.
That's a good point.
And that's it, guys. That's pretty much what without specific questions being asked.
No, I really appreciate that perspective, because you're right. We are so unique. We are all so different, right? And we all come from different social economic backgrounds. And while, Out for Justice will be here in East Baltimore if you want expungement, but if you don't want to come to an Out for Justice, there should be other places that feel more familiar to other people. I get it. So
yeah,
thank you.
I think one of the things that happens is there's this stigma that there's a stigma that when you have an attorney, those that have attorneys are from displaced communities or from the poor. Every time I have a mom come into my office, or an uncle or a dad come into my office and tell me, "Oh, my son or daughter isn't like this," I have to stop them and let them know that there's a small percentage of Black attorneys that don't make their money off of panel cases, don't make their money off of the PD's office, and don't make their money off the poor community. Majority of us make our money off the middle class. So almost every, sorry about that, guys. Sorry about
it's
that.
Okay.
Guys. So almost every, there's rarely a situation, and when those have been, sorry, I'm doing the festival, so I have artists kind of calling me, but those individuals that come into our office to pay that money are normally coming from, middle class families to upper middle class families. A lot of and even, let's make sure we're clear here. That's the reason why we charge what we charge. And when I say charge what we charge, a lot of times we're not charging over a $1,500 increment, right? Because that's what your average family can decide, you know what, we're not going to pay rent this month, or we have rent coming up, and this $1,500 increment is what we would rather get our son or daughter out of certain situations, right? And so when you look at that, that family that's paying that $1,500, and now because of the housing market, maybe close to $2,000 for their housing, they're probably going to keep calling me, guys, until I kind of click over.
No,
But
we understand. We understand what that looks like.
I think it's very.
It looks like a busy man.
No, that's fine. I think it's very important to understand that, you know, the people that need your community aren't the displaced at all. A lot of times they are middle class folks that, you know what, that young man that's 18 to 35, I'll say, right? He may qualify for your programs, but because of the family he's from, he will never catch the bus, right? He will never look like he's of need of anything. And quite frankly, you know, there is a slight level of, you know, parents
Just
taking.
say it. Just say it.
You know, I mean,
So,
you know,
Can I help out a little bit?
Yes,
Yeah, go.
please.
So
Mr.
basically
Earl,
what he's
let's
saying, his clientele lies in a different category, and the people that he's dealing with from the area that he's probably in, so to speak. For example, let's just say Montgomery County in the rural area. You know, those people around there.
Well, he's not saying he's not.
What I'll say is this, right? So there's levels to poor,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So just because you live in certain communities does not mean you're poor, right? And you know, I'm a Title I kid. I went to Cecil Elementary. I've played in Oliver Rec Gym where OTF is, and
OTF, I ain't OTF. I know that group. Don't call me OTF.
Oh, you know what, guys? This is Dennis Chain, master drummer. I'm going to get right back on. He's called me 4 times in a row.
Yeah, go ahead. Come back if when you can. Appreciate
Go ahead,
you.
Maurice.
Hold on.
But
Let me pivot really quickly to Matt, because I wanted Matt to bring us back full circle. But that's what this is all about. It's like this holistic, natural conversation. But let me pivot back to Matt.
Thanks, Nicole. And I'm glad that, you know, the topics have come up around like, what is the context? You know, it's not only expungements we're talking about. It's everything that's related to it. You know, it's not navigating one system. It's navigating systems because they're all connected, you know, with things like class and different communities and like levels of access to resources. So that's always an important aspect of the conversation. Honestly, expungements should be automatic. It's not kind of a fair responsibility that individual people have to worry about getting expungements and all the choices they have to make. And so, you know, on the topic of those kinds of barriers to, you know, opportunities, I wanted to turn over to Chris. You know, you were going to talk about the unit rule, which is a really important aspect of expungement law.
Yes.
And then also more of like the look at the policy, you know, how does legislation, people in Maryland's Congress, for example, affect the expungement law?
You got it.
Yeah, just, you know, really give us the barriers to expungement. So you will.
Oh, wow. There's a whole PowerPoint for this too. Thank you, Matt. Yeah. So the unit rule. So the unit rule is based in Criminal Procedure 10-107. And what it simply says, and it's rather egregious, what it simply says is that if you have one charge that is not eligible for expungement, then whatever other charges, so let's say, and this is a big problem in Baltimore City, where an individual will get hit with a plethora of charges. So a lot of charges at the same time, right? It really should have just been, let's say, trespassing, but you got trespassing, burglary, assault of a police officer, like all these things at the same time. Suppose you had 3 charges, but one of those charges you were found guilty, the other 2 you were not. So those other 2 would now be considered non-convictions. In normal circumstances, they would be eligible for expungement within 3 years because they are non-convictions. You were not convicted. However, thanks to the unit rule, if the one charge where you were found guilty is not eligible for expungement, then the rest of the charges that you got at the same time, that's called a unit, those other charges are not eligible for expungement. So let me see how nasty this can be. Suppose you were, and this is a bit of a dramatic example, suppose you were hit with a trespassing charge and you were found guilty of that, but you were not found guilty of a second-degree assault and, let's say, burglary of the third degree. Those, the second-degree assault and the burglary of the third degree, are not eligible for expungement until, even if you weren't found guilty, until that trespassing charge is eligible for expungement. That's called the unit rule. And depending on which jurisdiction you live in, depending on how the police charge you or overcharge you, that becomes a massive barrier. So what happens is when an individual is seeking employment, they will see, oh, this person had a trespassing charge. Okay, well, that's not a big deal. But then they'll see all these other charges. And unfortunately, employers are not lawyers. Many of them are not. So they don't know what a null prosecute is, or they won't understand what an acquittal is. That's the unit rule. It's a terrible thing. We've been trying to get rid of it. However, we tend to go up against state's attorneys when we're trying to fight this battle, which I'm sure Mr. Coleman can talk more about. But that is the unit rule. Harold also testified on that bill back in 2020. We did make a slight adjustment to it in 2020. What we simply said was, and it was a hard bill to pass, it took about 15 years to pass it. What it simply said was those non-convictions can now be shielded. That's why I mentioned that in the first place, because shielded does not mean expunged. It just means that it's hidden. So, oh, wow, look at that. You guys are wonderful. So what it simply says is that now those charges, if a person is savvy enough, they can still find those charges, even though they were not guilties. However, the goal would be to get rid of them altogether. And just so you know how nasty the unit rule can be when it comes to different strokes for different folks, there was a judge in Baltimore County who was serving a law enforcement officer, and the law enforcement officer was accused of a sexual offense. He was not found guilty of the sexual offense, but he was found guilty of a minor charge. Because they happened at the same time, they are part of the same unit, which means the minor charge, he can't get the sexual offense off until he gets the minor charge off. And that minor charge is not, I don't even think it's going to go away. So he's just set up for life. So what's interesting is that this judge in Baltimore County, what he decided to do was erase the entire docket and then reestablish the docket with just a minor charge on it. That was his way of getting past the unit rule. We've been considering trying to, but there's no way to like codify that in law, but that's like the kind of things that happen. Now that he did that specifically because he said to the law enforcement officer, I don't want this to get in the way of your future. Now, the question is, if you can do that for a law enforcement officer, why can't you do that for the average Baltimore City, Prince George's County, Montgomery County, Anne Arundel County resident? Why is it different strokes for different folks? Because that same logic, I don't want this to be a barrier for your future, is what we say every single day, specifically when an individual is not found guilty. So that's how the unit rule works. It's a really nasty rule. If anybody has questions about that, you can just go ahead and throw it in right now. Otherwise, we can move right along.
Yes. Hello?
You can go ahead and talk, man.
Oh, okay. Yes. Well, I'm very concerned about the time, the framing, like the amount of years that some of the people have to wait. And, like if someone has a year in jail and it's for felony theft, for example, that felony theft, you got to wait 15 years. So if
Matt,
the
can
judge
you put that slide up if you have the waiting periods, please? So we can explain that as well. Go ahead. Continue, Harold.
Right. So I'm trying to get it up on my, so there we go. So so felony theft, it's a 15-year waiting period. So if someone's 18, 19 years old and they're young and they may, took a credit card or been involved with some type of theft or, in that fashion, and they do a year, they get full, do 90 days and then get out on like some type of parole or probation, and they finish their time on the street at the age of 18. So you figure they 19, 20 years old, they literally have to wait 15 years. So look at that time that's going to be lost that they could be gaining in school or college or something of that nature. And it's kind of like a street sentence, and it hurts. So, I know in the beginning, like he said, the first bill, what was it, 2020 that we worked on
The
to
unit,
get
yeah, to make
the unit rule.
for shielding.
Yes, right. So we need to start making people aware of this throughout the state so that we can get people to come in and testify and to go to their legislators, start talking to them, coming. I was the only one down there last year besides Chris advocating
Community, yep.
for a reduction in the waiting period, because if we can get the waiting periods from 3 to 5 years, then people have a chance, and then we can work on adding offenses or creating bills. We can add more misdemeanors or maybe some other felonies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But you got to take. Go ahead.
Sorry, let me go and jump on that, because one of the things that makes Maryland law special compared to other states, and I believe well, first of all, I'm gonna just look at this list. Yes, what makes Maryland law special compared to other states is that Maryland law does not, you'll see in that fourth column, from completion of incarceration and supervision. So unlike other states, you have to finish your entire sentence, parole and probation, and any other type of drug treatment or mandatory supervision before, you can go back one slide, Matt, before that waiting period actually starts. So that 15 years, it comes after you spent 1 year in jail, perhaps 1 year on parole and probation. Then comes the time when you start waiting that 15 years. So it's not just 15, to be blunt, it's around 17. For many people, it's 20. If you had a theft charge or a burglary and that ended up with you doing 5 years, or CDS possession, now you have 5 years. That means that after that 5 years is over, and let's say you do a year of probation, that's 6 years, then the 15-year waiting period starts. So Harold is absolutely correct when he calls it a street sentence. You already did your time, now you got to do your street time. And then, there's all this question as to why don't people get jobs and why don't they want to work as hard as we do? The issue is that you've literally blocked them from being able to go on with their lives. So in other states, this is why I wanted to show that second slide. You can go back to that slide, Matt, I apologize. They don't have those issues. If you look, for example, Oregon is from the completion of your incarceration, whether you are on parole or probation. Once you get out of incarceration, for misdemeanors, you only have to wait 1 or 3 years. In the state of Maryland, that's 10 or 15. When you look at, which I believe Mississippi, there is no waiting period. You do the charge. Once the charge is over with, you can just get it expunged immediately. But Maryland, it's 10 years minimum that you have to wait. So that of course is huge. And I just want to mention Maryland is ranked number 42 in the length of waiting periods compared if you put all 50 states together. Now, there are some stipulations. When I've talked to other judges, what they'll say is, well, we'll just give them a probation before judgment. That is the reduced waiting period. And that's 3 years of a waiting period instead of 10. But the fact that Maryland has some of these, the laws are this long, it's kind of ridiculous. That's just misdemeanors. Felonies is the vast majority of felonies are not eligible for expungement, but with Maryland, you're going to be waiting 15 years to get that experience as well.
Yes, and to add to that, it's just think about someone, like I'm 53. I've been out of prison since 2003, and I'm still waiting because I had offenses right after another, because that waiting period will extend out. So, for example, if you have a first-degree burglary charge that you got in 2000, and then you serve that sentence. So, in 2015, that that waiting period would be up. I'm just using that example. But then you go out and you commit another offense. If that offense is a expungible offense, that just pushes the waiting period out. And see, they know what they're doing. It's all designed to hold everybody of criminals down. They don't want to release nothing. And what happens is these people go back to their communities, whatever, and they looking down on themselves and they're saying, man, I gotta wait all this time. So what the hell? I'm just gonna keep doing what I'm doing. So that's where the problem is. That cycle just keep going. And them state's attorneys, they know what they're doing. They want to have everything that you ever did. They don't want nothing to be expunged. They don't care, you know. So we need to get together. You need to get out here, talk to as many people as possible, because like I guess Matt said, one thing affects the other. So if we can get these waiting periods reduced, then people can move on with their lives. And then the next, and it affects housing, it affects all of the communities throughout the state. So we got to get out and advocate. We got to be in these legislators' faces. If we need to get what we want, we need to get put together, start talking to other people that might have situations, and start getting them to go down here and talk to these people and being in their face, because that's where the difference is going to be. It's going to be, we need more than us. It's going to be, we need a lot of people.
Yeah,
And we need,
sorry to cut you off. I really appreciate everything you're saying right now. And I know, Dwan, you wanted to join the conversation. So I'll pivot to you.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I just wanted to, in light of everything that we've talked about today, about the waiting periods, and then also Chris mentioned a particular case of, how a judge handled a particular situation with a law enforcement officer. My question really is, what are some loopholes or resources that individuals can use to sort of to help navigate that? What tools with their lawyer, obviously in association with their lawyer or whoever's representing them, to help to either I don't know what the right word is, not compensate, but what loopholes are there that we have at our disposal to be able to circumvent or to try to reduce some of these barriers when it comes to expungements?
Yeah, now I focus on the policy aspect. So I'm mostly in Annapolis trying to change the laws from that perspective and trying to develop against state's attorneys. So I think that's a better question actually for Mr. White or even Matt, actually. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think you are on mute right now, Mr. White.
I mean, what are the loopholes? It's, I think this is where the advocacy, it comes into play. It's just a lot of times just the education. I mean, there's really no loopholes. Like to do expungements, a lot of times robots can do expungements, right? I mean, there is a slight analysis in it, but a lot of times when you go into these, a lot of times it's our time that we're giving up, and the ability to sit down and let's say legal aid or JOTF or Alfred Justice, they know, okay, this is an attorney that understands how to do an intake, right? So outside of the intake and being able to kind of analyze, okay, this is your charge. Okay, you can't get one right now, but you can get one in 3 years because you're not at the 10-year time frame. It's just pretty much 1 + 1 = 2, But in regards to knowing what the actual, what that time frame is, I think that we can do a better job in the community. I mean, I'm 35, so I have a group of buddies who all can get their records expunged, right? And so there's just a level of, bro, you are a very intelligent guy. Why are you still working these BS jobs, right? Oh man, I got that. Remember I got locked up in 2007, I got that. What? You get it expunged, right? And so even now and this is why I have the insight on the Daily Bread. I have a friend of mine who's coming in on Saturday. So I'm like, look, I'm doing expungement on Saturday. You always tell me you're not free during the week. Meet me at Daily Bread on Saturday. So it's like, oh man, I'm not trying to be seen at our Daily Bread. And it's like, come on, man, look, it's free. We'll knock it out and be done with it, right? But the first step of that was the education level of it, and me having the insight to say, okay, you are my age. You play poker better than I do, which means, you have a good sense of people, you're always taking my money. We go to the casino, you leave with money, and I'm like, okay, this is why I can't come here. But then on the other side, it's like, okay, you either aren't financially, illiterate, or the jobs you have are just not there. So when you come to find out someone is 35 making $15 an hour, where at 17 they all had the box Lexus, in 2000 and 2001, just doesn't add up. Okay, so how can we put you in position to now make $35 an hour rather than you making $15 an hour, right? And at the end of the day, that's what LTF and Bolt. A lot of times just education, and that's it.
Yeah,
And
I will.
oh,
Sorry, go ahead, Dawn.
Oh, I was gonna ask, is this something that you think state's attorneys or prosecuting attorneys was that what you were about to say?
That's exactly what I was about to say.
Do
In the
they
state
take
of
into
Maryland, the vast
consideration?
majority, and I'm
Yeah.
sure I wish Nicole was on here because this is a big topic for her, but the vast majority of state attorneys that I'm aware of are elected officials. So like this is one of those big things. For example, the attorney general, I mean, that's up for an election right now. I believe it's, I want to say it's Anthony Brown and Miss O'Malley, former district court judge, I think the wife of Martin O'Malley. Bottom line is, the question is like, so when these people are having these campaign events and they need to be talking about what is your view on criminal record expungement. And this is another little narrative. I can't stand this on a personal level. I get the rhetoric. This is about a second chance. The second chance happens, this is just me being personal, when the person was released from incarceration. The waiting period, which is the secondary street sentence, you're just holding me up, bro. You know what I'm saying? There's a difference between somebody slapping my hand and cutting my entire hand off and stopping me from being able to eat. So like at some point, like if you want people, this is what Harold was talking about, if you want people to be able to get employment, if you want them to be able to get housing, if you want them to be able to get education or scholarships, you're gonna have to do something about criminal record expungement, and that's not happening. So, and you can testify to this, when you go to Annapolis, the number one resistor to these bills is the State's Attorney Association. If it's not John Cox of Baltimore County, it's Scott Schellensberger of Baltimore County. It's, oh man, there's so many people. Chief Judge Morrissey, who runs the district court. These are the people who are actively, aggressively trying to prevent access to criminal record expungement. And the last thing that you should be aware of is, because he's in Baltimore City himself, District 46, Chairman Luke Clippinger. He's very liberal. He's a very smart guy. However, he is an assistant state's attorney. So if you have persons that are in positions where their job is to ensure that, these systems stay in place and they're the ones who change the laws, well, then you're going to have to either bring that up to them or kind of move them out of position or make them feel a little bit of pressure for, moving these people in the right direction, especially when 1 out of every 3 incarcerated persons returns to Baltimore City in the state of Maryland. It's huge, and it's 15,000 people a year are returning from incarceration to Baltimore. I mean, to the state of Maryland, and a third of that, 5,000 is going to Baltimore City. It's every single year. So, like, this is a big problem for us. And so, if our elected officials are not aware of that, or if your next state's attorney, Mosby's under fire right now, is not going to be supportive, you're going to have some pretty huge problems.
One more thing I was going to say about that is, do you think our attorneys, so, private attorneys or even public defenders, are they considering that when perhaps they are representing someone who is taking a plea deal? Are they going to take the plea for the maybe the expungible offense versus something that, especially if it's a unit? I hope I asked that question properly. Are they encouraging a plea deal that is going to be able to be expunged at the end of the sentence? Sorry.
So, I think that's something that the more seasoned you are, the more that you see, cases come back. When you start to see the recidivism that happens, like I'm in my 7th year. So of course I'm looking at that now, right? Year 1, year 2, when you have the hierarchy of mentorship with the amount of Black attorneys that have been disbarred in Maryland, the mentorship is not there for someone like me to even have that hindsight to know, okay, these charges are the ones that I need to look for that 5, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, that may hinder my client, right? However, because I have been seasoned now and I'm seeing some of these things, of course, over the last 2 to 3 years, that's something. Also, the higher you go in the, that hierarchy of top lawyers, right? You know, with someone like as big as a Ken Ravenall, who I personally believe was improperly charged. And if you throw the big charges against the wall, you know, something's going to stick. But if it was just the money laundering charge by itself, I think he would have been fine. However, with that being said, when you take someone out of the pool like a Eddie Smith or like a Kenneth Ravenall, what happens is that level you're now starting to get, or someone like myself, I'm starting to get clients way before my time, right? So I'm getting 45, 50-year-old clients as my clients, and now they're wise. So not only am I being their attorney, but they are also telling me, hey man, I'm worried about my job. Let's make sure I can get this way, right? Whereas when I first started, I'm dealing with their children. I'm dealing with the 18 to 25-year-old who his only concern is being locked up right then at their time. Where that 40-year-old is like, listen, I'll do those 18 months if I can take this charge and I don't have to worry about the back end of as much probation time or that. So having seasoned and being seasoned, which means not only that you're getting more cases, but you have the mentorship, as well as sometimes you just get more astute clients that understand the criminal law a lot more, because that 45-year-old, yes, we have Duncan that's on the line now that was very successful in his transition, but a lot of times that 45-year-old has juvenile situation, early 20s, and then maybe something in their 30s. And at 45, you're getting that client that's like, okay, I'm now getting too old to run the streets. So I'm 40, at 50, I want to make sure I can start to take care of myself. Their parents are starting to get older. Their parents are starting to die off, right? And so it's a different perspective than just, are you guys training on this? I think the public defender's office will start to do that. And when the public defender's office trains their own PD's office, it does trickle out to the solos, right? But with that being said, when you're just starting out, when you have 18 to 25-year-olds, the last thing they're worried about is 15 years from now. And sadly, in Baltimore, Brother Warren Brown stated earlier, it takes 4 years to get a college degree. But within that same 4 years, we may lose 1,000 young Black men, And so knowing that, I can understand why a young 18 to 23, 25-year-old is thinking of, man, I'm just not trying to go to jail. If I go to jail, I may be caught up in gangs. If I get caught up in gangs, this one neighborhood, me hustling 1 minute is going to turn into another 5, 15, 20 years of my life. So something to think about.
Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, thanks everyone for the great conversation. So I know we have a few participants here today. And, I think the panelists are having a great conversation, but I want to invite anyone else on the call to, participate. Are there any questions about expungement, about the unit rule, the experience of people who have to deal with expungements, in their other circumstances, or anything that you'd like to add to the conversation?
I have a question for Chris. Chris, what would you say the next steps are, like maybe even between session, in terms of building momentum for further change to these expungement laws? Like, what do you feel like we need to almost even get started on now?
Yeah, that's actually a really great question. What I would say is, I'm always for a threefold strategy, and that's networking, research, and advocacy. And so what I would simply say is, hitting those in reverse. One, this is an election year. So I would be at, if wherever you live, if you live in District 46, 45, you're in I'm just talking about Baltimore City here, 40, 41, 43, I would be showing up to random legislators events. They have fundraisers all the time. They're doing debates, they're doing Q&As. There's a gubernatorial election as well. Just show up and ask the question about, what is your view on criminal record expungements? Those conversations are always recorded. They're always posted somewhere. So someone is going to hear that conversation, even if they look up what expungements are. That's what I would say. Be at these legislators events, be in their faces, and make this an issue for them. That's part one. Part two is learn the expungement law yourself. And then, if you are specifically an individual who has a criminal record, figure out how long your waiting period is. Contact your legislator, the person who represents you, and let them know that this is an issue. And also think about things that are actually impacting you with regards to criminal record, and then reach out to advocacy organizations like Out for Justice, like the Baltimore Action Legal Team, like the Job Opportunities Task Force, and let us know, hey, this is actually infecting me. This is a problem. Anything you guys can do about this. That gives us the conversation for us to then become advocates. What we do is we then will take that information and turn it into a state law. So something that we're thinking about, second-degree assault is 15 years. It's a very long time. However, we found out that the reason why that is because you have a lot of domestic related charges in there. So second-degree assault goes from throwing a phone at somebody, bumping into a police officer, to literally physical abuse to a significant other. So let's talk about creating a third-degree assault. That's a conversation I had with what's her name, Miss O'Malley, just very, very recently. So I would say that and then of course, when organizations like JLTF, like Out for Justice, like the Baltimore Action Legal Team are reaching out, as Harold said, for people that have these experiences that can come out and testify, I would say come out and testify. So in summation, advocate for yourself, advocate for these bills, learn the expungement process, join conversations like this, or get in contact with the Out for Justices of the world to learn more, to be involved in these conversations, and then show up to every legislative event. These people control your lives. And I'm not just talking about on the state level, that's where I work, but on the city level as well. And just keep that conversation going, because the more people that are talking about it, the bigger these issues become. That's the only reason why police reform passed in 2021. It's because it was a national conversation in 2020. So just stay active and stay on it and keep talking to people about it.
Thanks a lot. That's great.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments they want to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, following up with Chris, that we have to advocate. That's the most important part. Learn as much as you can, because that's, like he said, that's what I did. Once I understood how things work, I knew how to deal with it. And then we got to get down and advocate. Talk to your legislators, find out when events is, because like you said, this is an election year. You got to be in their face, talk to them, ask them questions. And if you see them again, you keep asking the same questions, or, you just keep moving around. You gotta get out there, and then you gotta talk to other people and get them to come forward that might have the same situation, and just keep advocating. That's the most important part, because they're, the state's attorneys, and they know how it's affecting the communities and how it's affecting people. They don't want to change it. They want to keep conviction rates. They don't care about that, so we got to get out here. The most important part is advocate. I took off of work and went down to Annapolis almost every day on my own time. I lost money at work just to try to come forth, and I was the only one down there. So it's important that we get out and try to get in contact with these people and talk to them and stuff like that, and just be in their face. It'll make a difference if it's enough of us.
And remember, these people represent you as well, right? Like, they need you, believe it or not, more than you need them, especially if you're one of their constituents. And I got to say, Mr. Coleman, this is the reason I wanted him on this call, probably the most dedicated person in Annapolis. This guy was showing up every single day after work, coming up, getting in Lou Clippinger's face, who's the chairman of the Judiciary Committee that handles these issues on the House side, and was talking to Senator Smith, had spoken to Senator Carter. Pretty much everybody that was on the Maryland Judicial Proceedings Committee was in Senator Patterson's office, who was our bill sponsor, was talking to Kurt Anderson. I mean, like, that's the kind of thing that if we had 50 people doing that on just any one bill, you would see transformational change. It's just that simple. just talking to these people and just being where they are. So I got to thank you again, Mr. Coleman, for doing that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'll do it 100 times more. You know, we, like he said, we got to do that, you know, and you find out, just go talk to them and just be in their faces, because if you don't put the polite pressure on them, they're not going to do anything, you know?
Yeah. Thank you. I'm glad we're ending more on a note of being uplifted. You know, what can we actually do about all the problems that we brought up tonight? That's always a good place to be as a community. And, you know, Dwan, so people don't forget, you know, OFJ also does a lot of advocacy where, you know, you work in the same communities as JOTF at times. So can you talk a little bit about OFJ's advocacy, Out for Justice's advocacy, and how people could get involved with that?
Sure, absolutely. So a couple of things I want to mention, but I'll get to that first, is Out for Justice definitely does, you know, our focus is for sure policy reform to remove barriers like inability to get an expungement. And so if there is somebody who needs help with the expungement or has any other issue that is impacting them negatively, or their family members or their loved ones or whatever, you can reach out to Out for Justice. Go to our website. You can fill out a needs assessment form. You can email us directly at getinfo@outforjustice.org and just give us your concerns about whatever the case may be. And so we can help you advocate. We want to empower you to use your voice. And some of that stuff that Chris talked about is knowing who your elected officials are. So you can, you know, write them a letter. We can help you with that. We can help you form testimony during legislative session so that you can actually use your voice to say, you know, this is something that is directly impacting me. You are my legislator. I strongly encourage you to do something about that. So there are a number of ways that, you know, you can help, and also making sure that you're registered to vote. So there are a number of ways, but reach out to Out for Justice. And like Matt said, we work with JLTF and other organizations to help get out the message and to advocate for policies, reform, opposing, or repealing, or pushing new policies that will aid to help folks who are coming home or just transitioning. Or even if you've been home and you just have difficulty in a number of areas as a result of being directly interacting with the criminal legal system. So that's one thing. And then there is a question that it got in the chat from Ray Janique. It says, is there a way for individuals to check their record if their record was expunged? Because like was mentioned earlier, it can be confusing on if their record is sealed or expunged. And that ties into another question, and maybe Chris, you might be able to answer this, is recently in the news, a lot of people might have seen that there is an individual who was working for the police department in Baltimore who, I think he was a chief financial officer, or one of them. And so he had some run-ins with, you know, the law, and he was able to get that expunged. And so as a result, he was able to get this job with the police department, but someone decided to dig this up. So two questions is, if it was expunged, why was this something that someone's able to get access to? And then as a result of this, he was, you know, released from his job. So can you speak a little bit to that? First, how do you look that up and verify that it's expunged versus sealed? And what's the difference between that? And then you did mention that earlier, but also how was this possible?
Now, this is a really tricky part of law here. So here we go. So I'll answer the first question first. So if your record has been sealed or expunged, you wouldn't be able to tell. What tends to happen is you would get a record. If your record has been expunged, they would send you something in the mail saying that this specific charge has been expunged. And what you'd have to do is make sure that you maintain your paperwork to know that it has been expunged, because what will happen at that moment is that it's literally been obliterated. So it no longer exists. So if something like this were to happen, which is what Mr. Dana went through, Mr. Hayes went through, you're going to have the issue of having to now prove that your stuff was expunged. Now, to him specifically, his issue is a lot more nuanced. It's actually really funny. So what he got was a probation before judgment for, I believe it was a firearm, right? And the reason why it was probation before judgment, which means that he was not found guilty, that's a non-conviction. He got probation before judgment because there was not evidence to prove that it was actually his firearm. It's a firearm that was found at the bottom under his seat at a car, right? You could be driving someone else's car. All sorts of situations can happen in that capacity. Here's the thing. In the city of Baltimore, when you have any type of gun offense, now this is city law, not state law. This is where it gets interesting. The state law says that a probation before judgment is eligible for expungement within, after you've done the probation, and then after 3 years of the completion of the probation. So I believe he got this charge in 2018. In 2021, he had the charge expunged through the state. However, the city says that if you have a gun charge in any way, shape, or form, you have to be on a gun registry for at least 5 years. So state says 3 years and it's expunged, which he did. However, the gun registry, which means you have to show up, I think it's every 6 months for 5 years and just check in with these people. That's what's still there. So when they did a background check on this man, nothing came up, because the state charge was expunged. However, because he was still on the gun registry for another 2 years, that's what pulled up. And when that pulled up is when they pulled up on him and then had him removed from his place of employment. So that's actually not even an expungement problem. That is a loophole and something that we're considering legislation around in 2023. You get something expunged because the way the expungement law works, it says a state or police, it's a state record, court record, or police record. That's state law. However, the city jurisdictions are different. So we do need to be examining what local laws say as well.
Thank you, Chris. Very well said. And Elena, I saw you had your hand up, so I'll give you the last word actually before we start to wind this down.
I'm not sure I need the last word, but I just wanted to plug, piggyback on Dwan. So my name is Elena. I'm the research and policy coordinator at Out for Justice, and I wanted to plug that we have an advocacy meeting coming up actually this coming Wednesday, and we'll be posting the link on Facebook. I'm actually putting together our email to share the link that way as well. It's at 6 p.m. next Wednesday. And we will actually be talking a little bit more fully about what happens between legislative sessions. What can we do, similar to what Chris was sharing, to start building momentum for some of the laws that we want to change next year, but also work, like Dwan said, to find other ways to hold our systems accountable to just practice. And sometimes they're not even following the law. And so how do we push organizations to follow the law, to act in just ways between sessions, and to help people know their rights between sessions? So we will be talking about between session work at our next advocacy meeting, and we hope you all will join us.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's always nice to hear about the work that Out for Justice is doing, especially staying busy. Even though the session is over, there's still plenty to be done. So I want to end with some plugs. We heard from some great people today. And, Chris, in terms of the Job Opportunities Task Force, JOTF, how can people find you on social media, connect with your work?
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. So literally just at Chris Duis 91 on the Instagrams. Also, you can, I'm on Facebook as well, but you can also do at JOTF. You can always submit any questions, comments, or concerns. We're going to be putting up all of our updates and events like this that are happening, just so you can stay involved and stay in tune. So reach out to me, man. Talk to me. I love a good conversation. And when we're moving in a direction of a piece of legislation, send me your email address. I'll put my stuff in the chat, and just reach out.
Thank you. And Dwan, how can people find OFJ on social media?
Yeah, Out for Justice, we're in the process of streamlining our social medias, but I'll put our Instagram in the chat. We're OFJ 2014 on Facebook. And if you just want to email us, getinfo, GETINFO @OUT4justice.org. And you can reach out to us and we can connect you. And also our website at outforjustice.org. So thank you.
Yeah, I hear that. Definitely good to streamline. And as for Baltimore Action Legal Team, or BALT, you can find us on Facebook at Baltimore Action Legal Team. Also Twitter and Instagram at BALT Legal. That's BALT Legal. And yeah, thanks everyone once again for joining tonight. Just as one last reminder, this will be uploaded to YouTube and also posted to Facebook. So please, feel free to share with anyone who could be interested in the topic of expungements and also overcoming expungements in different ways. And with that, I'll give everyone a good night.
Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thanks, everyone.
What on YouTube is it going to be under?
It's going to be under Out for Justice and also Baltimore Action Legal Team. Literally just search Baltimore Action Legal Team Lawyer Up, and then you can find it pretty easily.
I'll also send you the link, Mr. Coleman. I got you.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And yeah, thank you, Mr. Coleman, for joining.
All right. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, bye, all.
See you.